Hello there, I'm Reverend Nhien, founder of Evolving Enneagram. If you've been seeking a compassion-based, contemplative approach to Enneagram inner work, you are certainly in the right place. We are in week 37 of a 52-week Sunday talk series based on the book by Oren Sofer, Your Heart Was Made for This. And we are on the chapter on wonder. So last week we explored contemplative wonder. And I talked about wonder as a portal into your own essential nature, wonder as a way to interrupt the habit of type. Well, today we continue on the theme of wonder, but I'll address it in the context of relationship. So today's talk is entitled Wonder Filled Relationships. So I want to begin by actually calling myself out, right? As someone who has been interested in psychology all of my life, I have this idea, right, historically that like I know why you're doing this. I know what he's going to say. And many of us who have been in the Enneagram circles for a long time, who've been studying or teaching the Enneagram, there's a way in which this could possibly get worse and worse, where we use the Enneagram more as a predictive model than a model for transformation, right? So just as we would hope that others are not putting us in a box, I want to invite the remembrance um, of how we can catch ourselves putting other people into the box. So again, a lot of us who are interested in the Enneagram are because we want to understand people better, right? And when we understand them, we're like, oh, okay, so and so is an 8. That's why they do that. There's relief, there's a sense of safety in our being. So there's some value to that. So I'm not demonizing this like desire to understand other people, but it's more that when we start to think that we already know someone, right? Either because we know their type or because we've been in relationship with them for years and years and years and years, right? When we start to think that we already know someone, we stop seeing them. And so if today's talk does anything, it could just remind you of like, oh, I forgot. I think I know this person, but I know I've changed. Right. So maybe I can be open to this person not showing up. Like, not everything they do is like, oh, it's because you're that. It's because you're a 7. Oh, they're just doing their thing. Oh, they're always flaky. Or, these stories that we tell. So we start to actually see our story more than we see the person. Right. And we feel safer because of it, right? Because, oh, that we feel more certain, we feel more right. And, but in that, we're actually less correct because we're not present in a way that allows us to see each other as we are. And especially for those of you who are in our CPE group starting this week, this is a great opportunity to practice, to really like be open in this community space, to sit with people and realize, oh, yeah, I've got stories about you, or I've got stories about your type, right? And maybe I'm willing to open to what is actually presenting and open to a transformed or bigger story about what's possible for you, right? Father Richard Rohr, in his book, The Naked Now, wrote, "We moved from wondering to answering, which has not served us well at all." So he's been a proponent of wonder along this mystical and contemplative path. It's so important, right? Also, one of my favorite poet philosophers, John O'Donohue, in a podcast interview with On Being, he once said that he thinks in relationships that sometimes the loneliness we feel is that we kneel onto each other at the points of our patterns and syndromes. And we could have a wonderful relationship, but we don't go into the vastness or the pasture that could bring us together, right? So in the workplace, he says, there are ways of being together as well. So this is not just like intimate relationships or family relationships, but where someone can come in and just raise the level of the conversation by asking good questions, uh, um, asking meaningfully, how are you? How are you? What is lighting you up? Or what is interesting to you? What are you reading these days? Or I like this one. What are the questions that you are wondering right now in your own life? What are the questions that are interesting to you right now? Imagine the connection that can arise from these kinds of questions that open up conversation, right? Open up connection. Now we're going to talk about the 9 Enneagram types and how, based on your type, so we're not talking about you looking at other people's types, right? Based on your type, how you might look at your own bias so that you can open up with a little bit more wonder and curiosity and see how you are coloring the interaction, right? So I want to also say that I'm going to do my best to continue to post on social media some of these lessons as well in kind of an abbreviated form, but really use this medium, which is YouTube. I like it because there's space to go a little deeper. So I want to elaborate on what you might find on social media regarding scrubbing off your assumptions. So one way again of opening up to wonder is it's like we're cleaning off the glass through which we're viewing other people. For the type 1, it's all up to me. Just notice how much that's your story when you relate to others, whether it's your family or your coworkers. And then what do? You stay late and you're the one still cleaning up when everyone's gone to bed or gone to play, right? You're the one at work, still responsibly finishing the assignment and resentfully thinking about other people. But notice how this belief can actually impact whether you're willing to ask people, whether you assume people would want to help if they knew, right? Like, so there's just this piece of being open and being curious and being willing for there to be a different result than it being all up to you in all of your relationships. So, type 2, I can't ever say no to my loved ones, right? Until twos meet the Enneagram. Like, this is, I mean, this is usually revelatory that if someone's special to you, it's not for everybody, but if they're special to you, you just feel like you need to be on call, right? And so the assumption is like that. And so breaking free of that is like, there's space for me to say yes to me. And so how do I relate differently when I can really clearly define my boundaries with my loved ones and not assume also related to this is the assumption that twos make that, first of all, that they know what the other person is wanting or thinking, right? So a lot of times twos aren't even like saying no to what the other person asks, or it's this idea that like the two thinks, oh yes, but you have to have this happen. So it's almost like it's double damning you in a way if you're a type 2 and say like they didn't even ask me. I just projected that they'd want it from me, and now I'm saying no to other things in my life because I'm saying yes to you, when really I'm not even saying yes to you. I'm saying yes to what I think you want me to do, right? So double whammy. For threes, there's an assumption to scrub off that it is not okay to be average. And of course, I'm writing this lesson from a deep personal wound around threeness where I do feel like somehow if I'm only average at something, uh, that there's something terribly, terribly wrong, and you will reject me. Like I'm not good enough if I'm only average, right? And so leaning into that for the 3 is really about being open about these times, being open about your fears and insecurities, being open about because it can be hard for other people to perceive the lack of confidence in a 3. Threes project very confidently, even when they're not feeling confident. So four is have the assumption I don't truly belong. I mean, this one should be pretty obvious in terms of like, oh, how is that going to impact how you show up in any relationship, right? There's a kind of battle between what's my authentic self and conforming to what I think you want. It's like what is it's like a scarecrow, like argument. It's maybe not even what's going on, right? But there's like this storyline around it. But what if I just assume that I belong here? That could be a good starting point for you to interact with the group in a different way, or your partner even in a different way, right? So, and I say that because I know that there have been fours. I've known fours who are like, I don't feel like I belong yet, and it's my group. I'm the leader. So it doesn't matter how long you've been in it, right? You might still have that issue. Okay. So five, social interactions will drain me. I love the story that a five I know once told about how he went to a party and was pretending he was not a five at the party, and he noticed how just by sort of playing that part, he realized he had more energy than he usually has. Like, he has this story about being depleted that is actually not always the truth of what happens in social interactions. So that's really interesting. And so, again, not always looking at interactions as to regarding this expectation of what is being demanded of you, but being present there to possibly receive the gift of just being there, having great conversation and interaction and affection even, right? So sixes, everyone values safety as much as I do, can be an assumption that you make where then you also offer unsolicited advice around health and safety, or you um, you impose your your needs and then project it on to them, right? And so really getting clear on like what your needs for safety are versus the other person, so that you can be in real relationship with what the other person is actually needing, right? Not what you're projecting that they're needing. Okay, seven. Oh, it's not okay to not be okay is the assumption of the seven. And uh, this is so, I don't know, there's something very precious to me when sevens learn that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And I know a seven I was working with years ago whose mom had passed away, and she was the cheerful one in the family, right? And getting ready to go visit her family and feeling that responsibility to cheer others up, right? To not have her be the one that was down. And so we were able to work with that and be with that in a way that allowed her to let her have her own grief, right? To know that people will welcome you in many spaces, even if you're down, right? That you don't have to be up to belong to the space. For the eight's assumption is life's an uphill battle. So relatedly, you're either for me or you're against me. Or for some eights, I might either be for you or against you. And well, how does this impact your relationships? It's pretty black and white thinking, like who's on your side, who's not. And so that can also impact, I've seen in partnership, where if you're, I mean, it could be the person that the eight loves, but they're like on the other side of the argument suddenly, and suddenly like the other side is truly like the enemy, and you can't, it's sort of like you don't see beyond that, right? So just recognize that, how you can go back and forth in that way, in a very all or nothing way. So for nines, finally, conflict is bad. I know nines are like, well, isn't it? Like, so, but that's an assumption. And sometimes when someone brings up a conflictual issue with you, it's like there's a speed that nines will have to like want to harmonize it or resolve it so there can be peace again. And a lot of times, especially the emotional realness types, 6, 4, and 8 can feel not seen if they're presenting something that feels conflictual to you, and you act like you're trying to get rid of their feelings by making things better, right? By giving them the positive outlook approach. And so these are just ways, some examples that might apply to you in your life today or not. Again, I don't want to make assumptions, but these are just ideas for how you might start thinking about the assumptions that you make, how they might be related to your type and that you just didn't see before. And it impacts your ability to really meet the moment in your relationships in a way where other people feel truly connected to you, like you see them and you can experience them and you can be present to them for what is actually here rather than your idea of them. Yeah. All right. And so I'll close with a quote again that I recently shared on social media that really resonates with me. Your assumptions are your windows on the world. Scrub them off every once in a while, or the light won't come in. That's Alan Alda. So I will see some of you this week in our Contemplative Practices and the Enneagram group. But even if I don't, I hope that I will hear from you in the comments below. Even though it's on video, it's important to me to be in authentic relationship. It's a dialogue, it's a conversation. And so I encourage you to check in, let me know how you're doing, what's going on with you, and see you next week. Namaste.